Everyone, my name is Joe. I'm the Kentucky Atheist. My goal here is to have honest conversations with those who are capable of doing so and to expose those that cannot, particularly when it comes to issues such as politics and religion. I hope my perspective as a broken person and former Christian, born and raised in the Bible Belt, inspires others to do the same. If you want to join me on this journey, there are a variety of ways you can, from joining my Patreon and becoming a member, or just subscribing to my channel and liking this video. I appreciate every person that takes the time to listen to what I have to say, so thank you. And with that, let's move on to the video.
Welcome to the Kentucky Atheist.
Ain't no motherfucker in this world could do it like me. Open up your eyes and insert a little rising. You don't have to love me, you don't have to like me. Got enough love in myself and my psyche. You should have the same in your brain nightly. If you wanna taste it, you can fucking try me. If you wanna hate it, you know where to find me. And if you're going hate this, you can fucking bite me. I'll be cruising in my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, ha, nah, unlikely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running shit right, see. And I ain't playing games.
So today, I'm going to be taking a look at a video posted by Donnie from the channel Standing for Truth. And what is the clickbaity title of this video, you may ask? Well, it's called "Check Out This Easy Defeater of Evolution, Confirming Biblical Creation." Of course. I'm familiar with the dishonest quote mining and complete misrepresentation of science that are common on this particular channel, not to mention their resident doctor. But today I made the decision to set through this short video and hear the groundbreaking discovery that not only has evolution been debunked, but biblical creation has been confirmed, because apparently I hate myself. Just to set the stage here, Donnie is the ginger and he runs Standing for Truth, and it's fine, I guess. His guest today is Jerry Bergman. Jerry is not an expert in the field he will be speaking on today, unless you count his diploma mill PhD from Columbia Pacific University, an unaccredited school that was court-ordered to cease operations in 1999. Jerry is a young Earth creationist that has been affiliated with the Institute for Creation Research, and while he has written some 20 books or so and been credited some 600 times in articles, many of which are for AIG News, none of his work has been published in any peer-reviewed science journal. Imagine that. Just wanted to introduce our new friend, and let's get into this Nobel Prize-worthy discovery
that you wrote recently, which I thought was excellent and really just a fascinating line of evidence for creation, in my opinion. And so right here, Dr. Bergman, July 10th, ape and human Y chromosomes compared. So in my study, without going through the details of the article, and maybe you can speak to this, the human and ape Y chromosomes are divergent in many ways. The human and chimpanzee Y. And just from my own slides here, I have a visual of your Y chromosomes from the primates, because the evolutionary community considers humans to be human apes, and then your chimpanzees, bonobos, so on and so forth, to be non-human apes. When you actually compare the Y chromosome with, let's say, the chimpanzee Y, they're nothing alike. They're only about 35% the same when you consider overall size differences, overall architecture, and gene content. It's half the size, as you can see here. And
when you compare the Y chromosome of human apes to non-human apes, they're nothing alike. But then he says they're 35% alike. Which is it, Donnie? I mean, which one? He bases this on size difference, architecture, and gene content. Chimps are one of our closest living relatives, with their DNA clocking in at 98% the same as that of human DNA. I recommend watching Gutsit Gibbons' video on this subject to better understand that number if you're interested. And just to be clear, this Y chromosome thing isn't news in any way. In an article published in Nature, a peer-reviewed journal, if you care about that kind of thing, there's an an article titled Chimpanzee and Human Y Chromosomes Are Remarkably Divergent in Structure and Gene Content. The abstract reads, little is known about the recent evolution of the Y chromosome because only the Y chromosome has been fully sequenced. Prevailing theories hold that Y chromosomes evolve by gene loss, the pace of which slows over time, eventually leading to paucity of genes and stasis. They go on to say, we suggest that the extraordinary divergence of chimpanzee and human MSYs was driven by 4 synergistic factors. The prominent role of MSY in sperm production, genetic hitchhiking, effects in the absence of meiotic crossing over, frequent ectopic recombination within the MSY, and species differences in mating behaviors. So this has been studied and peer-reviewed. Papers based on science provide natural explanations, right? So what's the big deal? Let's see what he's got here.
In terms of the nested hierarchy they like to point to, right, Jerry? The gorilla Y and the human Y are more similar to each other than either are to the chimpanzee Y. And so there's a break in their so-called hierarchy. Anyways, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to your work here and this topic of ape and human Y chromosomes being compared.
Yeah, Jerry, speak.
Well, one thing that bothers me, which I pointed out in the article, was that what they're trying to do is they'll do a sequence, another sequence, and they compare the two. And they look at this sequence evolved into this sequence. Now, the problem with that is, of course, we don't have any sequences of our missing link between us and the apes. So they take modern apes and modern humans, and they assume that the ape genome was similar 50,000, 100, 200,000 years ago. And the human, therefore, evolved from this ape genome. And the problem with that is, of course, is they're comparing modern to modern and not actual ancient to modern. And that's one problem. The other problem.
Correct. We don't have the sequenced genome of our long extinct common ancestors, the chimps. What we do have is the theory of evolution, which is based on evidence and has been corroborated and observed over and over and over. Evolution, you know, the cornerstone of modern biology, the best tool for explaining the diversity of life we see today. So it's not so much we are assuming as much as it is we are applying the theory of evolution because it works. I mean, does evolution account for the differences that you're bitching about here? It absolutely does. So why is it an issue, Jerry? You're saying that since we don't have the sequenced genome of this common ancestor that we have nothing. But again, we have evolution, which explains this. Seems like something else is going on here with Jerry. Well, let's see where he goes with this.
Problem is, what we need to focus on, I think, is why are there differences? Not how one became another, but why the original in the ape, for example, is different, what function it has, and why the Y in us, for example, is different and the function.
So your problem isn't that other stuff. So your problem isn't all that other stuff that you said. It's sexual dimorphism in humans. Another thing that evolution accounts for. Please go on.
It has. And of course, one major obvious difference is that is the sexual dimorphism between humans is much greater than that between apes. Male and female ape are similar. You can tell the difference if you studied anatomy, but by and large, the human difference is when you go through adolescence, pretty obvious that this person's a male and this person's a female. I know sometimes it's not as obvious, but generally it's quite obvious the differences between males and females, quite outstanding. In fact, when you look at this transsexual revolution in this country, the surgery to make a man into a woman involved shaving the Adam's apple, because that's a sexual difference, a secondary sexual trait, because men have a more prominent Adam's apple than women do. So if you want to transition to a woman, there's about 35 operations that can be done to cause that transition to occur. And one of them is shaving the Adam's apple down.
What the hell are you talking about, Jerry? What the hell does transition surgery have to do with our last common ancestor to chimps with Y chromosomes at all? You make the excuse that it's because of a visual difference between sexes and humans. The only thing this proves, Jerry, is that you sound like a transphobe and that the judge was right to shut down the diploma mill that gave you your PhD in biology. Sexual dimorphism occurs in many species and is much more obvious in a lot of them. So it sounds more like a personal thing here, Jerry, than anything based on science.
So that's a secondary sexual trait. And so when you look at chromosomal differences between males and females, especially the X and the Y, or the X in particular, then we can see that a lot of those differences have to do with the male secondary sexual trait differences, which causes the animals to be dimorphic. Dimorphism, of course, for most animals, there's differences, but not nearly as great in most cases as people.
Really? What about these? And these? And these, Jerry? And let's not forget my personal favorite, the anglerfish. What about all these? It seems like you're just wrong about this, Jerry. I mean, evolution expects and explains sexual dimorphism, and I don't think you would say that the anglerfish isn't related to other fish because it has more pronounced physical differences between male and female, right, Jerry? Right? Moving on.
We have a huge dimorphism between male and females in humans, but in cats is the most famous example, when the vet makes a mistake. Oh, sorry, I thought this was a female, but it's a male. And I always find that humorous. You're a vet. You're supposed to be able to tell the difference. But I'm understanding from friends that had their cat checked by the vet. Vets not uncommonly make mistakes. And I say, come on, you should figure that out. And they say, well, when they're really young, it's not that easy to figure out. When they get older, it sometimes is a lot easier. But on the other hand, with some animals, of course, dogs is more apparent. But on the other hand, most physical traits of a dog are pretty identical to males and females. But certainly with humans, that's not the case.
And I thought I was a rambler. Jerry uses dogs and cats as an example, but he sneaks in there that he's been informed by experts that when they are kittens, in the case of cats, it's sometimes hard to identify the sex. But in humans, that is certainly not the case. Again, Jerry, this is just not consistent with what we see in humans of a similar age. I would go as far as to say, just based on physical appearance, it's more common to mistake the sex of a human child than it is other species. So far, you've given me nothing, Jerry. Nothing.
I think you made a lot of excellent points there. And so what we're looking at would be better explained as functional or design differences rather than evolutionary differences.
Wait. You think he made a lot of excellent points there, Donnie? You were either not listening, or you're just being dishonest, or maybe you're just not equipped to do the job of thinking. You can't be serious. He has yet to make anything resembling a valid point. This so-called defeater of evolution is nonsense.
From a common ancestor.
Evolution leads them away, I think, from what the main purpose should be of understanding the genome. Let's try to figure out what it does and why they're...
Okay, so intelligent design explains these things better, you say. So this is where you get to the second part of your title, where you confirm biblical creation specifically, your preferred flavor of creation by a Christian God. Am I right? You're going to prove it now? Let's see.
differences, not trying to hypothesize how the differences occurred through evolution.
Right, I think you nailed it, because this visual here, Jerry, this comes from an evolutionary publication in 2017. And notice how they assume evolution to prove evolution. So they got human and chimpanzees here. So chimpanzees are our supposed closest cousin. And we go back to an apparent ancestor 6 million years ago here. And then there was a split. Human line one way, chimpanzee and bonobo lineages the other way. But they're assuming that this common ancestor 6 million years ago actually existed. But we don't have the genetics or the data or the evidence of this ancestor.
Again, you don't have the genome of every ancestor going back 6 million years, then you don't have anything. This is dishonest, and more importantly, it's a stupid thing to say. It completely glosses over all the wrong things that Jerry just said. Evolution predicts that an ancestor at that time because of the differences between us and chimps. And evolution has an excellent track record when it comes to its predictive power. Now, does that mean it's 100% the case here? No, we don't know for sure, but it's supported by lots and lots of evidence. To say otherwise just dismisses whole branches of science, including the ones you've pulled all of your info from thus far.
Is that right, Dr. Bergman?
Oh, yeah, that's right. And that is an interesting area to look at, which I haven't done so recently. So I'm glad you brought that up. If that comes up in the literature, I'd like to do some comparisons between the human Y and the chimp and other Y. And I expect there would be a huge difference because, of course, humans are very sexually dimorphic, not nearly as much as many animals.
What? Donnie just ignored the fact that Jerry said he doesn't know the answer and admits he hasn't even done a comparison between the human and chimp Y chromosomes, but that he thinks that humans are so much more sexually dimorphic than animals are, which I think I have shown is just not the case. This is all just based on what Jerry thinks people look like. It has nothing to do with the Y chromosome. He just admitted he has no idea about the comparison. This ought to be a train wreck. Let's keep moving.
Or
Well,
much more so than many animals.
Yeah, it's interesting because in this publication, they say that the Y chromosomes between the human and chimpanzee differ enormously. So it's not just a moderate difference, but it's an enormous difference in size and gene content. They say the chimpanzee Y is only half the size as the human Y. And in terms of shared genes and overall architecture, the human Y is more similar to the gorilla Y than to the chimpanzee Y. And so as a creationist, we can view this without that evolutionary lens or bias and say, yeah, they're so different because they're not related. We're looking at separate ancestries. But the evolutionists, correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, they're assuming evolution. So now they're just going to explain, and you talk about this in your paper, they're just going to have to say, well, after the human and chimpanzee lineages split, these deletions happened over here, this duplication happened over here. So aren't they assuming erroneously that these mutations even happened in the first place to make these differences?
And clearly, they assume evolution is true and try to explain.
Projection. The creationist go-to is post hoc rationalization. He tries to hide it here by picking his words carefully, but he accuses scientists of assuming that evolution, which is confirmed and corroborated theory, which has been observed over and over in both the lab and field, while out the other side of his mouth saying we as creationists just dismiss all that because we have all the answers already. We use evolution to explain why we see a 98% match between human and chimp DNA. They are saying this one chromosome differs somewhat, so we get to dismiss all that other stuff. How does that seem reasonable in any way? Let me know in the comments if you understand why they just dismiss everything and move on with the creationist argument.
World, in this case, the genetics world based on evolution. And boy, that gets one into trouble. I've learned you got to be careful about assuming things because assumptions can get you into big trouble. And so
you have to be fucking kidding me, right? Science doesn't assume that evolution is true. They observe it and they use those findings to show how it explains this. And if we find evidence that supports that it allows them to refine the theory of evolution more and more, then good. The title literally says this confirms biblical creation. That's the only assumption I see here. And rather than being supported by any observed specific scientific theory, it's just been claimed to be confirmed.
In your life, I'm sure if you think about your past 20, 30 years, assumptions got you into trouble because you assumed something which turned out not to be true. And so in the case of evolution, they all too often assume things which all too often turns out to be not true. And so stop assuming, just look at the genes and try to find out why they are different. Don't assume, try to figure out why they're different. And with apes and humans, of course, we know major reason is that
literally what
humans are among the most dimorphic of all animals, all sexual animals. Most animals, I would say the majority of animals, you can't tell the difference between males and females. You know, if you're an expert, you can. Size is a big.
All right, Jerry, saying the same wrong thing again doesn't make it true this time either. You're still just wrong.
Expert, you can. Size is big, colors, so there are differences. But on the other hand, without knowing a lot about birds, for example, I can't tell whether or not a bird coming up to my feeder is a male or female. I can't tell. Now, if I was an expert, I could, but there's not obvious differences where with people, it's pretty obvious. Even if you're a 3-year-old, you can tell the difference between a male and a female because the differences are so great.
Right.
3-year-olds know very well, very early, who's mommy and who's daddy and the differences.
They know because they're taught who mommy and daddy are, you dunce. And you point out that experts know how to tell in certain animals. Almost like when you've been taught how to determine these things, you stand a better chance at successfully determining them. Also, you keep going on about these obvious differences, but you don't give any example of what they are. I wonder why. I wonder what he could be talking about.
What would be your favorite way or preferred way in terms of Bergmanology? Because we as creationists, we believe in separate ancestry. We would argue that humans are not related to any other form of life. We could group humans together with Neanderthals, Homo erectus, so on and so forth. We've done shows on that in the past, Jerry. But that group, the human group or humankind, are separate and independent from, let's say, the chimpanzees, gorillas, dogs, fish, banana plants, and so on and so forth.
Yes, you've made that claim repeatedly on your channel, and you've yet to ever support it with anything other than quote mined papers and lies about science.
The evolutionists, they argue for universal common ancestry. All life is related through common ancestry. And so what's the best way, or what's a way that we as creationists can determine that boundary where we say this creature is unrelated to these creatures over here?
I think one of the best illustrations, if you look at the human phylogeny tree, we all were at one time, well, the most ancient common ancestor of all life is sponges.
Right.
And so later on, though, we got worms. And so in the human evolutionary tree, you got at the bottom, you got a worm, and that worm eventually evolved into people. Well, another worm is still a worm. It's not evolved at all. Another worm was interesting. I did an article on this. Another worm is, ironically, has evolved human type eyes, but that's about all. Looks very strange creature, but nonetheless, this worm evolved human camera type eye. This worm didn't evolve at all. And this worm evolved into people. So if you line it up that way, you can see I think, a big problem in evolution, in that why did this worm continue to stay a worm? Why now evolutionists can explain that? Well, it was highly evolved, and therefore it well adapted to its environment, and therefore it didn't need to change.
Is it fucking April Fool's Day? I mean, you titled this video as a defeater for evolution and confirming biblical creation. And just now, Donnie claimed it was true with no evidence whatsoever. And Jerry just said, if we came from worms, how do worms still exist? Again, not demonstrating the claim, but for sure demonstrating that he has no idea what the hell he's talking about. This argument of, if we came from monkeys, why do monkeys exist, has been a creationist claim for years and years. And it's one of the stupidest things they say. Moving on.
And so therefore, no problem. But on the other hand, why did this worm evolve into people? Well, its environment was not well adapted, and so therefore it evolved to better adapt to its environment. But in many ways, the environments are the same. It's hard.
In many ways, the environments for worms and people are the same. Isn't that just the long way of saying they are different? I mean, come on, Jerry, you can't be serious with this shit. Your argument has gone from wrong to transphobic to wrong again, and now it's landed in the realm of completely ridiculous. How do you write so many papers and books on this topic and not understand the most basic points and expect anyone to take you serious or sincere? That's my question.
To say this environment caused this worm to evolve eventually into people. This environment caused this worm not to evolve at all. And another environment caused this worm to evolve camera type eyes, which look very weird, but they work pretty well, I guess, from the research.
That's an excellent answer. I just finished a 3-part series with Dr. Carl Werner on his work on living fossils. And he pointed out that there are many species of mammals existing with the dinosaurs, but textbooks and kids' books don't like to show that. Many living fossils all throughout the rock strata.
Yes, Donnie, mammals existed with the dinosaurs, but none of them are the same as the modern mammals that exist today. These are not living fossils. They are ancestors of today's mammals. How do we explain that mammals used to be different, but they changed over time to become the modern mammals we see today? What if there was only a theory that we could use for that? If there was some kind of observed process that could account for this? I guess wrap it up, everyone. Donnie's done it. He's defeated evolution with these things are almost like these things, therefore God. Go ahead and give him his Nobel Prize and get his room ready in heaven. He's done it.
Haven't changed at all in millions and millions of years. And so I think you nailed it there. Why didn't this specific organism evolve into anything else?
I'll be damned. I have a question. If you're a young Earth creationist that believes the Earth is thousands of years old, why would you be using an argument about animals that are millions of years old in the rock strata? Furthermore, can you show me one example of modern mammal that hasn't changed at all in millions and millions of years? I'll wait.
But then this organism in the same amount of time evolved from a small primate-like creature into humans. I mean, those are some major changes, and we all live in very similar environments. And so why is one organism changing so drastically in terms of phenotype, and then another one is not changing at all, if evolution is true?
We all live in the very same environments that apparently don't change, so we have no environmental pressures. So just to summarize, guys, we were given zero evidence of biblical creation and not a single argument that even challenges the theory of evolution, much less defeats it. So I have to conclude the title was a lie. But the dumb creationist argument of the week has to go to Jerry for the argument that girls have boobies and I can see them. That's all I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. And thank everybody who supports the channel. All of my channel members, subscribers, Patreon supporters, I really want to thank you for your support. You make it possible for me to do more stuff like this. And if you want to help support the channel, the easiest thing you can do is just like and subscribe on this video. But I also offer memberships starting at 99 cents, and I have a Patreon. All those links are in the description for all that stuff. I appreciate everyone taking the time to watch this video and listen to me make fun of Donnie for having crazy stuff on his channel that he says defeats evolution somehow. I don't know what he's talking about. But thank you guys. Thanks for watching. I'm the Kentucky Atheist. Have a great day.